You're welcome back. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. And this show is brought to you by the candid sponsorship of Star Assurance. And Star Assurance is dedicated or has a dedicated team that is ready to continue to offer you cutting-edge insurance policies that give you peace of mind and power to achieve your set goals. They work to protect your properties and businesses when the unexpected happens. They have branches all over Ghana, and they are focused on building partnerships that last a lifetime. Talk to Star Assurance on 0302-240-632 or visit starassurance.com. Star Assurance, your CIMG insurance company of the year 2012. Star Assurance, that is your solid partner. And then I've told you about ZipNet, the ZipNet platform before. ZipNet Internet is your most reliable residential internet provider. Now, you have the opportunity to enjoy the residential broadband internet service in your homes in Accra, in Tema, Kumasi, Takoradi at affordable prices. To enjoy unlimited browsing, downloads, or streaming, subscribe to ZipNet's Bronze, Silver, Gold, or Night Park residential packages and experience reliable, awesome internet services in your home. To subscribe, visit ZipNet's sales center at Stambik Heights, Airport City, Accra. Call them 0302-740-090. Email info@myzipnet.com or visit the website, that is myzipnet.com. ZipNet, simply reliable. And Erata Motors, that is where you can find the latest cars, brand new and also slightly used ones for very, very, very cheap prices. Mercedes-Benz, Toyota, Infiniti, Range Rover, you name it, they have them. Go to Erata Motors at Lagos Avenue, opposite Body Talk near GT Bank, East Legon, or call 0244-445268 or 0277-486-800 and get the best vehicle deal in town. Erata Motors, the best vehicles at the best prices. And I won't forget to tell you about the Bank of Africa, where they have unique banking products for you, and you need to experience that unique banking products that have been tailor-made for you, either for your corporate or for your personal banking needs. All you need to do is call Bank of Africa on 0244-338-226, or you can also visit their website. Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. Now, after how many months of waiting for the Senchi report? You remember that government galvanized the best economic brains, so to speak, or people who had substantially something good to offer to help strengthen the economy or get the country out of its present predicament, challenges, not crisis. Assembled them at Senchi. They met for 2 days, is it? And then at the end of the day, they issued what had become known as the Senchi Consensus. But more importantly, the country had been waiting for the report itself. Now, the Vice President did present that report to the President in the course of this week, and the President says that he's committed, he's giving an assurance that he's committed to fully implementing the Senchi reports. I start on this note with Ni. Ni, you've been reading it. What do you find in that report? All the 5 committees, right? There were 5 different committees that dealt with various sectors. What do you find in that report that is so ordinary that will change things around?
Thank you again, Samson. I said the last time that one of the major flaws of Senchi, before even arriving at the consensus, was the failure to look at the economic history of this country and what has succeeded, what hasn't succeeded. No analysis was done about the economic history of this country. And even the report talks about the 1997 dialogue, if you like, the 2001 dialogue. And the question you have to ask is, did Senchi then draw on any lessons from those previous fora that was had, you know, what did the 1997 discussion, what did that deliver? What were the failures of 1997 and 2001? You would think that, given the situation we're in now, we would do that sort of analysis. The economic history of our country, the two previous dialogues that we've had, what did they deliver, what did they fail on? We didn't do any of that. We've gone there and we've come up with the same regurgitated, and I think the main players regurgitate the same thing. I mean, listen to what the governor has to say. The governor affirmed the need to maintain macroeconomic stability at all times and avoid destabilizing fiscal cycles.
That's the introduction in the executive summary.
Yeah, this is the executive summary, but it was more or less summarizing what the governor of the bank had to say.
I thought that your focus will be on the recommendations by the various committees.
I looked at it, the recommendations, because the recommendations are, this is a summary of those recommendations. And what I'm saying is, it's a regurgitation of the same things now. If you're a governor of the bank and you go there and you say we need to strengthen our fiscal performance, blah, 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 etc., and then you come up with a consensus which says we need to align our financial institutions with our developmental goals, what does that do? Does that mean the hardship you're imposing on Ghanaians today is going to be reversed? What does it really mean? How do you transform? We need transformation in people's lives.
No, I thought there are specifics there in respect of the Bank of Ghana about exchange controls, also about how to make sure that the government does not borrow more than, you know,
the question that it begs is, if you are in government and you know what to do you need to call a conference? You need to
this is where we are, and we are speaking to the report.
You know what? Yeah, I think that for me, it's a regurgitation of the same old situation that we're in. And I don't see any, and we looked at the 22 agreed, the so-called consensus the last time. And I don't see any you know, I don't see anything new which is going to transform this economy. I don't see, you know, synchronization of Ghana's financial markets. Notes that the directive principles of state policy required under the Constitution should be followed. You know, what is really the new substance in there? I don't see, you know, a single initiative in there, which I think. Are
you sure that you're being very fair to this report?
Share with us what you think, because I have read it.
In respect of the restoring macroeconomic stability, there was emphasis on policy credibility, yes, and they tell you what ought to be done in those areas. Mm-hmm. Okay, there was the need for, you know, fighting the budget deficit.
Yes, the report rightly notes
making sure that they don't recur, and, you know,
the report notes rightly that there has been a deterioration in policy credibility. You are in government. You don't need to call a conference to know that there's a crisis in the policy credibility.
Yeah, I was saying that don't pay attention to. Yes. Sorry, don't pay attention to those areas. I think that what we ought to be paying attention to are the recommendations. For example, in that subsector about the macroeconomic situation, number 1 says the Ministry of Finance should, as a matter of urgency, review for the consideration of the economic management team the target set in 2014, but in the 2014 budget. The review must identify likely deviations and make proposals for plugging the resultant financing gap, while the Bank of Ghana traces the implications of the revisions for monetary policy.
In all honesty,
they talk about fiscal measures to check, you know, overspending. For example,
is this all new? You would think that. I mean, I think every Ghanaian out there must think that.
And need point 6, very instructive. It's a matter that a lot of economists have spoken about, including Dr. Barima, calling for urgent consideration should be given to the promulgation of a fiscal responsibility law to help strengthen controls over expenditure. You say this is regurgitation of what?
The ordinary person sitting out there knows that the cycle we've had in this country, we've had so-called unprecedented achievement on macroeconomic indicators under MPP and under NDC. We've had single-digit inflation. We've had you know, huge foreign exchange reserves, etc. What has it meant for the ordinary person out there? We've had this unprecedented achievement, so-called unprecedented achievement on the NDC only 2 years ago, where there was a long list of achievements. You know, inflation is this, you know, and what has happened? So for me, some of the outcome in reading this report is, what does it mean? You would think that all the things that is called for, which you say is instructive, is a norm. I mean, you mean at the moment we are not monitoring our performance in terms of our monetary policy? We're not monitoring our whether we're sticking within our budget or our targets?
If we're doing so, we certainly will not be where we are.
Well, so for me, it's a given. Everybody thinks a given. You can't go and have a meeting for 2 days, call the best brains and say we should be checking what we're doing, which is what it amounts to. There isn't anything that I see. All the things that we need to do, we need transformation. There are drastic measures we need in this country, but unfortunately, those who have gathered the majority are those who have taken us over a 30-year period into this ditch. And they're coming to the same conclusions, asking for the same failed path. And for us in the CPP, this is not the path. So I don't see anything in there which tells me that tomorrow the fortunes of Ghanaians.
A while ago, you were talking about how we've abandoned the areas of manufacturing and all of that.
Yes.
This report looks at that
TUC,
and calls for attention to these areas in specific ways.
Yes. The problem is that we've been saying it over and over. Look at the manifestos of our two main opponents in this country. Look at their manifestos.
Kweku, you've also been reading. Which areas do you find, you know, grand, you know, moves towards rescuing this country from where it is sliding?
Well, I must confess that I haven't had the opportunity to read the entire document.
That's fine.
I got it only last night.
Okay.
You know, courtesy soft copy that was transmitted to me by the Ministry of Communications, and I had to download and print it out only last night. So I have to be very honest. I will proceed on a note of caution in terms of the details. The one that has struck me most is the macroeconomic, the group 1. You know, in fact, that is about what I have been able to do. You know, that's
restoring macroeconomic stability. Yes. That's group 1.
That's group 1.
Yep.
Yes, and I found quite interesting. I realized the drift you are pushing is that we shouldn't go back to look at the issues and what result. We should look at recommendations.
Yes, because they rehearse the issues we are familiar with.
Yes, yes, but I found it interesting in terms of the policy credibility, because we made that point here many times.
Dr. Kusibochi stressed on it, and we discussed it.
Yes, the inconsistency sometimes, and the challenges that come with implementation, and then the need we go back to reverse and revise and things. It creates a certain element of doubt in public mind. So that is well established, and I'm quite happy that they've been very honest with the issues here, particularly if you look at the one about the Bank of Ghana, foresting, and the tax and things. They've been very honest and fair that this created policy credibility for the country. Now, when it comes to the recommendation, and I can see where he was coming from, of course, he has a fundamental ideological disposition which goes against the kind of liberal economic things we are doing in this part of the country based on the party philosophy. And you can't take that away from them. The point really is for the party to market that philosophy, that platform, and get the electorate to endorse it so that you can have the party in power to implement.
But the major part of his concern is that we have the laws, we have the policies, just that we don't follow, we don't implement. And we have a very recent, example of how we had to, cut $3 million to Brazil.
Yeah, but he's right. But he's right in terms of the issues I'm reading here. The recommendations. I also don't see anything that is fundamentally new. See, the point you raised, the point 6, urgent consideration to be given to the promulgation of the fiscal responsibility law to help strengthen controls over expenditure. This is about 8-9 years old. This suggestion. And it's been debated and interrogated in the public domain. In recent times, Dr. Barima also laid emphasis on it. No, I'm not sure if Dr. Kusibochi also did. But this is about 8-9 years old.
When Dr. Barima did, Setekwe appears to have suggested that it wasn't necessary and that we had sufficient enough, checks within the parliamentary process.
Yes, but it didn't mean that it wasn't as old as Tekwe's own, in fact, older than his tenure of office.
Okay.
It's there. It's been debated. It's been raised left, right, and center. So the point really then is the commitment to operationalize it. Is it in principle a positive measure, recommendation or not? It is. I believe in it. Within the context of the economic structures that we are operating, okay, within the context of this economic structure that this country is operating, which is itself problematic, but that is what we have. That is the reality that we have now. Now, how do we manage this reality in such a way that some of the deficits and challenges and crises we are confronted with can be manageable? Okay, that's the idea. You need a Fiscal Responsibility Act. So, what action? A bill.
Right.
Accompanied by a memorandum, proceeds to the legislature. Let it go on. Of course, civil society groups must help by inputting, bringing a lot of memoranda to the appropriate places.
So what's your expectation of the implementation committee in respect of something like this?
First of all, I haven't even seen the membership. I haven't seen the membership of the implementation committee. I haven't. I don't know if you are aware. I don't also see timelines. That's why I'm being cautious, right, because I don't know if timelines are here in this document. The 2002 one, which I have here,
the dialogue,
there's an action plan with timelines. So within this 6 months, within this 1 year, this is what you do. Of course, they fulfilled some, they didn't fulfill others. But as at now, when I read this, and please may I be forgiven for, because for all you know, there's a timeline hidden somewhere in this document. But if there's a timeline, then we can police this whole thing and ensure that the things that we do, that subculture of coming out with fine recommendations and yet not implementing them, will be a thing of the past. Okay, otherwise everything here, all the recommendations, while some of them, many of them are old and have not been dealt with, are still in essence things that ought to be done, and if are done, can help rescue us from this economic
I'm looking at one, for example, like this labor management relations and productivity, which is very important. Labor was on demonstration recently, and people have actually been accusing labor of non-productivity and yet all the time asking for more. Point 27 says, national productivity. Government and the private sector should collaborate to institute a national productivity crusade. Employers, including government and workers, should ensure that they match productivity with remuneration. When you read this, how in your mind do you picture practically how such a thing is going to be done?
Well, we have a labor expert here. He might do a better job. But the point really is that it's a collective exercise.
Right.
But I think management and employers have a key role. You see, what environment do you create? There must be an enabling environment for labor to actually work and say that, look, I'm getting my due. Okay, for me, that's the way I see. Maybe because I'm pro-labor, that's the way I see it. But I think management, in supervising the workplace, management is key. The conduct of labor is related to a certain work ethic that has been put in place. Management and employers are key. I'm not saying labor has no role to play in the work environment in order to promote productivity. But I find it very difficult when people blame labor exclusively or mainly for lack of productivity. I have a difficulty with that because I think it's a collective thing, and I put the emphasis more on management and employers creating an enabling environment to inspire and to encourage labor to work as much as one would want.
Let me see how Doc, will see this. National productivity. Government and the private sector should collaborate to institute a national productivity crusade. Employers, including government and workers, should ensure that they match productivity with remuneration. This is one of our bane. How practically do you envisage that this is going to be implemented?
Well, it's challenging, but it's practical. And I'm picking from where Kweku stopped, because one of the important criteria that we need to establish for determining productivity is to demand certain minimum standard of operation for each institution, both public and private. And those minimum standards of operation also will require that every department, every sector should be able to come up. I mean, there should be certain performance measures which are clear and time-bound for each. Because I have a situation where even when you go to Europe, for instance, or North America, and you call an office, the person phone might be answered. I mean, the answering machine might take the call, but it doesn't mean that the person's physical absence means that the person is not producing. The important thing is to establish those criteria where even when you are out of office, you are performing. Now, in getting these standards require that the private sector, the public sector, then organized labor must work together. The procedure for arriving at those standards must be clearly defined, but government, as the biggest player, need to take the lead in defining that criteria.
National productivity crusade. And I'm thinking, and you know, anytime the question of productivity comes up and it relates to public sector workers, the thing that people imagine are the examples such as people go into the offices, they virtually do nothing, they go there late, no one is querying them, they leave the office earlier than if they had been employed in a private institution. They would have given their all, they would get to work very early on time. If you don't, you're going to suffer some sanctions. So what sort of crusade what nature will such a crusade take? Because it's the same individual.
Yes.
When he's working for the state,
yes,
he doesn't work.
Yes.
When he's working for the private person, he puts in all his efforts, best efforts.
Yes, I recognize that perception. I call it perception because there are some people in the public sector who really work very hard.
That is correct.
There may be others who probably are not working. But I'm saying that if we see people moving to office late and moving early, it's because we do not have the yardstick of measuring their contribution. So that's why I use the case of Europe or North America. Your physical presence should not necessarily determine your productivity. It is your contribution per unit of time which should measure your output. And that is where we probably are lacking. We need to have, and I'm saying that government as the biggest player need to take leadership in defining a procedure where collectively labor, organized labor, together with government, can work out those standards. Otherwise, if you look at the reporting time and closure time, it's also linked to a host of systemic issues. If I drive from East Legon to ministries, for example, and it takes me, if I have to leave within the rush hours of 7 o'clock, it takes me 2 hours to get to ministries. If I had to leave late, around 9, it takes me 45 minutes. Now, perhaps it may be more productive.
If I know I will not be queried, I can sit home and get and take off around 7 from my home, knowing very well that I'll be in traffic.
Yes.
But I do a private business.
Yes.
I know about the traffic.
Yes.
I can leave home as early as 5 o'clock.
Yes.
And I get to my office maybe by 6 o'clock, and I've started working.
Yes, but that's the point I'm making, that it is linked to a number of systemic issues. And I'm talking here about traffic in particular, which consume a lot of time of many workers. It also you have to take account of the way in which the offices are located. Everything is centered at one place, and everybody else is moving at one direction at a point in time. So there are a number of issues which have to be taken into account, and one cannot sit here and prescribe those issues.
Right.
But the point has to be emphasized that the way towards getting the productivity, the crusade toward that national productivity, is for government to take leadership and define a clear process through which we can arrive at a point where we standardize job performance.
Including what Professor Mills asked for. Don't watch television in the office. because we know that that's what happens in most of these offices. They're reading their papers or they are watching television.
We don't need a crusade, and I think if we're going to pursue this crusade line, it's going to lead to failure.
We don't need a crusade?
We don't need a crusade. We need possibly incentivization in the public services. And I'll give you a quick example. In the UK postal service, for years and years, absenteeism, lateness, or all of that, a simple incentive mechanism seemed to have cured many of those sales. They introduced the best postman of the year, and then the winner was you win a car or whatever it was. That cured some of the issues of, because we need to identify good managers. We need to incentivize the managers. Those managers need to incentivize their operations, and that will deal with productivity.
What do you say about that, Charles?
It's a very interesting issue, Samson. You see, the industrial relationship between the employer and the employee is a mutual one. Fact is that without anything to share, the employee surely will not get any significant salary. That's why there's the need that production levels go high. Now, we need to constantly have job appraisals to see whether or not employees in the public sector are playing the roles that they are required to play at their workplaces. Then we should look at the issue of their salaries. There's an interesting saying in industrial relations circles to the effect that if you pretend to pay the workers, they will pretend to work. So it's a vicious circle. And the problem for us in Ghana is that there's a certain mentality in workers of the public sector that what is for all of us is for nobody. And so nobody particularly cares. But if we develop a structure where workers are being monitored frequently, make sure that they do what they are required as per their employment contracts, then of course we'll be heading towards an improvement of the productivity level at the public sector.
I see. Kukui's been going through, and I just...
Because I haven't really had a chance to read it.
I didn't want to, put you to one particular area where I have read, but I wanted to ask if going through there's something else you have found that, catches your attention and, makes you feel, look, if this thing is pursued, then we can radicalize the situation, so to speak.
Well, as I said, quite a lot of them are...
Kuku, where I feel it appears that a certain, national, there's a certain national attention on a particular area, which appears not to have been catered for, is the size of government.
That, it's a long debate. We've had that debate for a very long time.
Dr. Ibn Chamba spoke about it also?
Yeah, but let's be practical. I think what people should do now is to give practical suggestions or proposals. A few moments ago, you were trying to do some realignments and collapsing ministries into...
Exactly.
Yes. So that is how we should proceed about it. You can't just give a figure that, look, 20. I recall Dr. Indum had a figure of about 40 or so. I'm not too sure how that is sustainable. We have about 80-something now. Deputy ministers, regional. There are people who have argued, do we even need regional ministers?
Exactly.
Okay. Do we need deputy regional ministers?
What's your view on that?
I think we need regional ministers.
But we don't need deputies.
We need maybe one deputy instead of...
At the region, that's what it is.
Yes. So I am for regional ministers. You see, we are a unitary Republican state, and we are still very developing. And we need to make sure that the executive has a firm hand on all the regions. And the executive is represented, that is here, the presidency. We have it's executive presidential rule we're having. Needs to have somebody in the region representing the presidency. So regional ministers, I'm not about to discount. For that matter, he needs an assistant, a deputy. So one deputy regional minister will be okay. It's some of the ministries, the central government machinery. That's what we can look at and do some realignments. You understand? People have raised the point about do we need We don't have Ministry of Aviation, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Roads. Can we find a way of collapsing merging them? When you do so, you get a bigger bureaucracy. So you have then also to look at the technocrats and the bureaucrats who work in it. No, I'm not an expert there. It's that I have a bit fatigue with that debate about the government is too large, so let's have a smaller one. Let people give us practical suggestions, give us those areas that can be collapsed into each other, and then let's see how we proceed. But really, to be honest, if the economy is working effectively, if those who have been appointed, regardless of their numbers, are productive and efficient, this debate may become very moot.
I think we can look at globally. This can easily be solved in terms of larger or smaller government. There are so many examples in the world, and I'm not going to list which ministry should be merged with which, but I think that we should simply look at what works and what doesn't work in other jurisdictions. How many ministries does the UK have? Or even smaller countries like Greece or Spain or Australia, or we can look at all of the best examples in the world and seek to emulate those.
Some of them have more efficient bureaucracies.
But that's what we need to seek to.
So then it takes away the political element. But if you don't have an efficient bureaucracy and you have a country that is not very cohesive, you are not careful, you may have also some problems.
Okay, we'll take a quick break here. We'll return and we'll look briefly at the question of the cedi that is, I say, is on its knees 4 times and 6 times against the dollar and the pound sterling. We'll look at that briefly, and then we'll zoom into other areas to look at, visit the mafia at Kolebu, of course, go to the Supreme Court and find out why the EC can't go on with its registration exercise so far. And when we do make some time, and I'm sure we may, we would look at how you remembered President John Mills. We'll be right back.